Welcome back, everyone. Great to see you. We are in session 7 of our Essentials program here with Colin. We're going to talk about Exodus 19, which is all about the law and the covenant. So, Colin, if you would, just tell us a little bit, what's going on here, what's the context, where are we?
So, a really important chapter in Exodus. The people have made it to Mount Sinai, and they'll be at Mount Sinai basically for the rest of the book of Exodus. And here God gives his covenant to Moses and to the people.
Right. And so, we hear a lot about covenant. Is this a new covenant, or what is significant about this covenant? Is it something different?
Yeah, great question. I'd say yes and no. There is newness, but it stands in continuity with the covenant God has made with Abraham. So one way to think about it is that this is a deepening of God's covenant with his people.
Makes sense to me. So it's a sort of reiteration of what's already happened. I follow you. Now, in terms of how this all unravels in the narrative, how does God initiate this covenant, or how does it begin?
Well, I think this is important. God begins by stating what he has done for the Israelites, and that he has delivered them. In fact, if you look at verse 3, God says, "You have seen what I did to the Egyptians and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself." So that's how he starts, that incredible image of God as an eagle, of power and nurture, caring for its young. So God has delivered them. And it reminds us that in our relationship with God, everything begins with God. God initiates and starts the relationship. As 1 John says, we love because he first loved us. So he begins by saying, this is what I've done for you. And because of that, you can trust me and enter into this relationship, this covenant with me, knowing that I have good things in store for you.
Now, when I think of a covenant, there are two images that come to mind. One is more like a contract. The other is a relationship, a sort of distinct and detailed relationship. So in terms of this relationship or this contract, what do the Israelites get? What do the Hebrews get out of this relationship? In other words, we see what's required of them, but what do they get?
Yeah, so God promises them that if they obey him, if they listen to his voice and follow him, 3 things they'll get. First, he says, they will be a treasured possession of God's. So they'll have a special relationship with God. Second, he says, you'll be a kingdom of priests. And that's an interesting thing to think about. So what does it mean to be a kingdom of priests? That they are to serve, also that they are to mediate God's presence to the world. Think about how a priest helps connect others with God's. This will be Israel's role in the world. And then thirdly, they will be a holy nation, or a people set apart for God's purposes.
That makes sense. Yeah. So they actually get quite a good deal out of this. They get to become a manifestation of God's own person and character in the world.
And an important thing to realize too, that the covenant is conditional. When God says, if you obey my voice, if you follow this covenant, you will be these things. And I think as we think about that conditional nature, it's not as if God is saying, I'll reward you with these things if you obey me, but rather that if this is the type of people you are, you will be able to be used by me for my purposes in the world. A disobedient Israel will not be the type of people that God will use. In fact, in the New Testament, in 1 Peter, which we studied last fall, this conditional nature about God using his people for these purposes shows up. In fact, the same images. Peter, this is 1 Peter 2:9. So this is spoken to us as Christian believers. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's own people, in order that, or so that you may proclaim the mighty acts of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light.
I see. So Colin, this is really interesting stuff. Now, what would be your major takeaway for those of us who are going to be reflecting on chapter 19 today?
Well, as Christians, I think it's important to remember that this all sets the stage for our covenant with God through Christ. Because what we'll find throughout the rest of the Old Testament is that the people of God struggle to keep this covenant. But in the incarnation, Christ embodies the covenant. He fulfills both sides for us so that we are able in his strength and his life and in his love to actually begin to live out this call that we see given to the people of God on Mount Sinai. We can be, as 1 Peter says, a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, in the power of what Christ has done for us and continues to do.
So the covenant holds, in fact, the whole way throughout all of the generations, all the way to Christ himself.
It does, yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, we hope that you're able to reflect on some of those mind-bending truths with some intentionality and hope, and we do wish that you have a wonderful conversation, and we hope to see you again next week. Thanks. Bye.